I see rays of fire coming from God, so intense, so burning, that they purify souls like gold is purified in the crucible, burning away all impurities until only pure metal remains. When St. Catherine of Genoa dictated these words, her body trembled with pain. For years, she had suffered an inexplicable physical torment, an interior fire that doctors could neither understand nor cure. She herself said, "My soul is in my body as if in purgatory. I feel the same fire that purifies the souls who have departed. Each day I experience this with greater clarity." And in the midst of this suffering, she saw. She saw with a clarity that both terrified and consoled her. She saw purgatory not as a theological concept, but as a living reality that pierced through her very being. For 25 years, Catherine experienced within herself the pains of purification that precedes heaven, and she dictated what she saw and felt word by word, while her confessors reverently wrote everything down. The result was the Treatise on Purgatory, a brief work only a few dozen pages, but of abyssal depth. Theologians and saints consider it irreplaceable. Saint Francis de Sales recommended reading it as essential to understanding this mystery. Father Garrigou-Lagrange, one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century, stated that biographers attest that Catherine dictated the treatise in ecstasy, narrating what she saw and experienced. In the very first lines of the treatise, Catherine reveals something that disarms any romanticism about death. The souls in purgatory have no alternative but to be where they are. It was God who ordained this. They cannot sin because they are confirmed in grace. They can no longer merit because the time of merit ended with death. They can do absolutely nothing by themselves to shorten their purification. Catherine writes that in the very instant the soul separates from the body, it goes to the place that corresponds to it. In the particular judgment, God manifests His truth to the soul, and the soul, illuminated by this divine light, recognizes with absolute clarity the justice and mercy of God, recognizing where it must be. Imagine that instant. The soul leaves the body and is as if touched by the light of God. It perceives infinite purity, immeasurable holiness, light that admits no shadows. And in that light, the soul sees itself with brutal clarity, clearer than it ever saw itself in life. It sees every stain left by sin, every imperfection, every disordered attachment. It still carries like dead weight. And then something extraordinary happens. The soul itself, recognizing its condition, adheres to God's judgment and goes where it must go. Catherine explains, when God judges with justice, the soul sees the truth of its state and recognizes the rightness of that judgment. The soul that dies in grace, but still with imperfections, directs itself to purgatory because it understands its need for purification. Why does the soul accept this? Because it instantly comprehends the absolute holiness of God. Catherine writes one of the most striking passages of the treatise. With regard to God, I see that heaven's gates are open. Anyone who wishes may enter, because God is all goodness. But the divine essence is so pure that if the soul notices any impediment in itself, it plunges into purgatory and finds there this great mercy, the destruction of that impediment. If purgatory did not exist, Catherine says, the soul with stains of sin would suffer a terrible torment incompatible with the peace of heaven, because it would know it is not ready for that union. It would know that its imperfections do not belong in the presence of the Holy of Holies. Purgatory is both justice and mercy. Painful purification, yes, but full of hope, because it certainly leads to heaven. But what exactly needs to be purified? Catherine explains with impressive theological precision. She distinguishes between guilt and penalty. The guilt of sin is forgiven at the moment of sacramental confession or perfect contrition. But what she calls rust remains the remnants of sin, the marks left on the soul, the disordered attachments that survive even after forgiveness. Catherine writes, The greatest pain of these souls consists in having sinned against divine goodness and still having in themselves something like rust, which are the remains of sin. It is this rust that must be consumed before the soul can see God face to face. She gives the example of iron covered with rust. The rust is not the iron, but it is encrusted on it, stuck to it. Fire does not destroy the iron, it destroys only the rust. It burns everything that does not belong to the metal until only the pure remains. Thus acts the fire of purgatory. It does not destroy the soul, it destroys everything in it that is not yet divine. And what is this fire? Here, Catherine goes far beyond everything taught in her time. In her day, purgatory was represented mainly with images linked to physical space, a place in the bowels of the earth, with material flames that tortured souls. Catherine offers a different vision. Purgatory is above all a state of purification. It need not be understood as a material place, although traditional language uses images of fire and place to help us understand. The fire of purgatory, Catherine says, is like a ray that comes from God Himself. More precisely, it is the purifying action of divine love. She writes, "I see rays of fire that purify souls as gold in the crucible is freed from its dross. These rays come from divine light itself. God is so pure, so holy, so perfectly good that the stained soul suffers when exposed to His holiness. But God does not withdraw. On the contrary, He draws the soul with a devouring love. And it is this action of divine love, this process of transformation, that burns away the impurities." Catherine quotes scripture, "Our God is a consuming fire. It is not fire that destroys out of hatred. It is fire that purifies out of love. It consumes everything that is not divine so that only what can exist in the presence of the Holy of Holies remains." Catherine's description of the suffering of purgatory is heartbreaking. She writes, "There is no torment on this earth that compares to what the souls in purgatory suffer. No human torture, however cruel, comes close to that. Why is the pain so intense?" Many spiritual authors explain that without the distractions and defenses of the body, the soul perceives with greater acuteness its need for purification. The soul sees with total clarity the offense it committed against divine goodness and feels with proportional intensity the pain of that separation. The fire burns with a force that has no parallel here. It destroys attachments the soul cultivated throughout an entire life. It tears out vices rooted in the depths of being. It consumes every remnant of pride, of selfishness, of disordered self-love. And this process causes real and profound suffering. But Catherine reveals something even deeper. The greatest pain of the souls in purgatory is not the fire itself. It is being still prevented from fully seeing God. She writes, "The soul sees that God, by His great love and constant providence, will never cease to draw it to its ultimate perfection. It also sees that, bound by the remains of sin, it cannot by itself correspond to this attraction." Catherine uses an image that pierces the heart. Imagine that in the entire world, there exists only one bread capable of satisfying all hunger, and merely looking at this bread is enough for hunger to be satisfied. A hungry man knows the bread exists. He knows exactly where it is. He sees the bread, but he cannot yet reach it. Each passing second, his hunger increases. The desire becomes unbearable. He sees the bread, knows that one day he will eat it, but not now, not yet. And meanwhile, hunger devours him. Thus suffer the souls in purgatory. They have been touched by the light of God. They have contemplated, even if partially, the infinite good. They have known eternal beauty. They know they were created for that union, and they burn with desire to be united to God forever. But something prevents them that rust, that stain they still carry. And as long as they are not completely pure, they cannot enter into full divine vision. This temporary privation of God, knowing they were made for him but not yet being able to fully reach him, is the greatest torment a soul can suffer. Catherine adds something striking. If the soul found a more painful purgatory in which it could be more quickly purified, it would plunge into it immediately. The souls do not merely accept the fire, they desire it. If they could choose an even more painful but faster purification, they would choose it without hesitation, because their only desire, their only consuming thought, is to reach God. And yet, in the midst of all this incomprehensible pain, something happens that seems impossible, that defies all human logic. The souls in purgatory experience a joy and peace that find parallel only in the joy of the saints in heaven. Catherine insists on this repeatedly throughout the treatise. I do not believe it is possible to find a joy comparable to that of a soul in purgatory, except for that which the saints have in paradise. And this contentment grows each day through God's influence on these souls. That is, it grows more and more as the impediments are consumed. And more. There is no peace comparable to theirs except that of the saints in heaven. And this peace grows unceasingly through God's influence as the impediments disappear. How can there be joy in fire? How can there be peace in torment? Catherine explains the paradox. The souls in purgatory are completely united to God's will. Confirmed in grace, they can no longer sin. They can no longer rebel. They feel neither impatience nor anger. Their will is perfectly aligned with the divine will. Catherine writes, "The souls in purgatory conform themselves perfectly to God's will. It is not possible for them to feel the slightest movement of impatience or anger, nor to want anything other than to be what they are." And she adds, "These souls, living in charity and unable to deviate from it, therefore can want nothing other than the pure will of charity. Being in that fire of purgatory, they are in the divine law, which is pure charity, and they can no longer deviate from it in anything. The souls know that God permits that suffering out of love. They know that each moment of pain brings them closer to eternal union. They know the fire does not destroy them, it transforms them. And therefore they accept everything with a serenity that surpasses all human understanding. Moreover, the souls in purgatory possess something that many lack here on earth: absolute certainty of salvation. Catherine writes, "These souls have certain and continuous hope of heaven. This gives them great contentment that never fails them. They know they are going to God. There is no doubt. There is no anguish about their final destiny. They are confirmed in grace. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will separate them forever from the love that created them. And this certainty fills them with contentment, even in the midst of the most atrocious fire." Catherine compares this to what a mother feels during childbirth. There is intense, almost unbearable pain, but there is also profound joy, because she knows that pain is generating life. The souls in purgatory suffer the pains of birth into eternity, and therefore, in the midst of indescribable suffering, there is unspeakable joy. Catherine dedicates several passages of the treatise to something that should touch us deeply: the dependence of the souls in purgatory on the living. She writes that souls can no longer merit for themselves, nor shorten their purification by their own works. The time of merit ended with death. Therefore, they depend completely on the suffrages of the Church on earth. And God, in His infinite mercy, established that our prayers can indeed alleviate the torments of those souls and accelerate their purification. Each Mass offered for a deceased person powerfully aids them, according to God's will, and hastens their purification. Each rosary prayed, each fast offered, each alms given in memory of a soul, all of this reaches them as true relief in the midst of purification. But there is something that should move us deeply. Many souls do not receive suffrages offered by people who know them. Souls who have no children, no close relatives, no friends who remember them. Therefore, it is a work of charity to pray especially for the most forgotten, for those who have no one to intercede for them. Saint Francis de Sales, a great devotee of Saint Catherine, wrote about this with emotion. He insisted that it is a duty of charity to remember those who have departed, especially those who most need our suffrages. This is not medieval superstition. It is not empty tradition. It is true charity, extending a hand to those who can no longer do anything for themselves but who benefit from our prayers. Catherine reveals something more about the differences among souls in purgatory. She explains that the pains are not equal for all. Some suffer more, others less, depending on the degree of purification needed. But all share the same certainty of salvation and the same profound peace amid torment. She writes, "While purification is not complete, these souls understand that if they approached God through the beatific vision, they would not be in their proper place, and therefore would feel greater suffering than if they remained in purgatory. The souls know they are not ready, and therefore, paradoxically, they feel themselves in the right place, in the place of purification that prepares them for eternal union." Catherine also touches on an important theological point that was debated in her time. Some theologians, such as St. John of the Cross, suggested that the souls in purgatory lived in great doubt about whether they would ever leave there, seeing themselves deprived of God in their misery. Catherine completely disagrees with this vision. She emphatically affirms that souls have certain and continuous hope of heaven, and this gives them great contentment that never fails them. According to Catherine, the certainty of salvation is one of the greatest consolations of souls in the fire. If the story of Saint Catherine and her visions of purgatory touch your faith, subscribe to the channel. Each subscription helps us continue bringing these forgotten truths to more people who need to hear them. In the final chapters of the treatise, Catherine leaves some of the most consoling revelations. She explains that the process of purification is progressive. As the impediments are consumed, the soul draws closer to God. And the closer it gets, the more its joy grows, even though the unsatisfied desire continues to cause pain. Catherine writes about the final moment of purification with moving beauty. When the last stain is consumed, when the last remnant of imperfection disappears in the fire of divine love, the soul finds itself perfectly clean. And in that instant, God draws it to himself with irresistible force. Catherine uses the image of a golden thread. God binds the soul with the finest thread of gold, which is his love, and draws it to himself with an affection so strong that the soul is left overcome, conquered, totally outside itself. And then the soul enters into light. It enters into the beatific vision. It sees God face to face. And all the pain, all the suffering, all the fire, everything disappears in an instant before the infinite joy of being finally home in the arms of the Father who created it out of love. Catherine ends the treatise with a plea that crosses the centuries and reaches us today. She asks us not to forget the souls in purgatory, to pray for them, to offer masses, to make sacrifices, to give alms in their intention, because they depend entirely on our charity for their purification to be relieved and accelerated. And she reminds us of a profound truth. One day, it could be us there. One day, it could be us in the fire, depending on the prayers of those who remained on earth. One day, it could be us awaiting the suffrages of the living. And how would we want to be treated then? With forgetfulness or with love? May the witness of Saint Catherine of Genoa remind us every day to pray for the souls in purgatory, especially for those who receive the fewest prayers, especially for those who have no one to pray for them, especially for those who have suffered longest waiting for complete purification, because charity does not end with death. It crosses through the fire of purification, and it arrives as true relief to the heart of those who most need our love.